What drives a person to pick up a rifle, take aim, and pull the trigger without hesitation? Revenge, a thirst for justice, or something darker, buried deep within? This story plunges you into the mind of a sniper for whom infidelity isn't just a contract, it's personal. But what happens when the hunter becomes the hunted, and the line between duty and betrayal blurs? When the person you trust most in the world becomes your ultimate target? A gripping, ruthless tale of love, vengeance, and the secrets we can't escape. Are you ready to peer through the scope? My dear friend, be sure to subscribe to my channel if this is your first time here, and give your royal like to this video. Desert memories always resurface in moments like these. Perhaps it's appropriate, considering I'm peering through a scope, lining up my next target. But this time, the target isn't a terrorist or a criminal. The irony stings. In this situation, I am the one on the wrong side of the law. My prey? A middle-aged, balding banker, drenched in sweat and engaged in an illicit rendezvous with one of his subordinates. Why is he marked for death? Someone paid for it. A shadowy transaction brokered through the anonymity of the dark web and sealed with cryptocurrency. I don't know the banker, his mistress, or the individual who hired me. By the time anyone realizes foul play was involved, I'll be long gone, leaving behind no evidence, no trace. Through the scope, I watch a moment longer, not out of voyeurism, but for precision. A perfect shot requires patience and timing. The poetry of the moment isn't lost on me, taking a life at its most vulnerable, in the very throes of ecstasy. The French call it la petite mort, and the irony makes me smirk. Adjusting the scope, I take in the scene. The hotel room window frames the lovers alone, isolated from the world. For a second, my gaze shifts to her. She is beautiful, unquestionably so. The contract specifies she must remain unharmed, and physically, she will be. But emotionally? Witnessing her lover's death in such an intimate moment will likely leave scars, maybe ruin intimacy for her forever. I scan my surroundings briefly. Focus is essential, but situational awareness is survival. Alone and without a spotter, I am solely responsible for my safety. My rooftop vantage point across the street offers excellent concealment and a clear shot. Assured that my position is secure, I return to my target. He's reaching his peak, movements frantic. I fine-tune my aim. The moment his back arches and he cries out, I squeeze the trigger. Before her scream shatters the silence, I'm already in motion. By the time authorities arrive, I'll be far away. My equipment will go into one of several prepaid storage units scattered around the city, each under a different alias. Driving home later, I can't help but reflect. How did I end up here, a hitman specializing in unfaithful spouses? The answer lies in my past. Shooting has always come naturally to me. Growing up on a family farm, I was a prodigy with a rifle. Hunting was second nature. Firearms felt like extensions of myself. Joining the Marines refined those instincts. Sniper school taught me the science of ballistics and wind resistance, though much of it seemed redundant. My aim was guided by instinct more than calculation. The military promised a bright future, but life had other plans. My focus on cheating spouses, that's personal. I've felt the sting of betrayal firsthand. Her name was Viviana, a petite, vivacious woman with French roots. I met her during a night out while on leave with my unit. Her energy drew everyone in, and by the end of the evening it was clear she and my best friend Aaron had connected. I stepped aside as a good friend should. Their romance flourished. Soon, they were inseparable. I often found myself the third wheel or paired with one of Viviana's friends. When Aaron showed me the engagement ring he'd bought, I hesitated. "Are you sure?" I asked. His grin was unwavering. "When you know, he replied confidently. The proposal was met with cheers, though I noticed a flicker of calculation in Viviana's expression before she smiled. I dismissed it, unwilling to tarnish Aaron's joy. As best man, I organized a bachelor party that was wild but respectful of Viviana's boundaries. Aaron stayed faithful, as I ensured. The wedding was small and intimate. 2 months later, we were deployed again, but something about Aaron changed. On a routine patrol, his behavior became erratic, snapping at others and acting recklessly. When I pressed him, he just grinned and shrugged. Aaron didn't survive that mission. From my overwatch position, I couldn't see the firefight, but his team later described how he had stood up, shouting a challenge at the insurgents before charging recklessly. He didn't make it far. Sorting through his belongings as his closest friend, I found the letter. Viviana had written that she was leaving him for someone else. She begged forgiveness but offered none in return. Rage boiled within me. Her betrayal hadn't just broken his heart, it had destroyed him. Aaron's death wasn't merely a tragedy, it was the collateral damage of her selfishness. I escorted Aaron's body home. At the airport, Viviana arrived, weeping uncontrollably. When she approached the coffin, I stopped her. "Don't you dare," I said, my voice cutting through her sobs. She froze, stunned. That moment crystallized my resolve. People like her shouldn't escape the consequences of their actions. And so, my career was born. Every contract I take feels like justice, a cold, calculated answer to betrayal. This is how I continue, making sense of my loss in the only way I know how. Zachary Jason Martinez fixed me with a sharp glare, his arm possessively slung over her shoulders. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" he barked. "How dare I? How dare you?" I snapped back, fury rising in my chest. "That woman, your so-called girlfriend, had the gall to send a Dear Jason letter to a soldier on active duty right before he went out on patrol." The betrayal seared through me like a live wire. I took a step closer, my voice a low growl. "What did you think would happen when I found out? And tell me, who's the piece of trash she left him for? You?" "Stand down, soldier," Martinez ordered, his voice as cold as steel. "I didn't know she sent that letter. I told her to wait." "You told her to wait?" I cut him off, my disbelief nearly choking me. "You went behind a soldier's back with his wife and you dare to justify it? You make me sick." Before he could get another word out, my fist connected with his throat, cutting off his retort and sending him staggering to his knees. A swift kick to his groin dropped him entirely, and I didn't stop. 4 hard punches to his face followed before the MPs dragged me away. The fallout was immediate. I was court-martialed for striking a superior officer, while Martinez faced his own reckoning for conduct unbecoming. The repercussions hit hard and fast. I spent a year in military prison and left with a dishonorable discharge. Martinez lost his pension and was unceremoniously ejected from the service. But even as I tried to move on, the sting of betrayal lingered. A year later, I tracked her down. She had fled to Canada, starting a new life with a French-Canadian businessman. The thought of revenge consumed me. Ending her from a distance would have been easy, quick, clean, anonymous, but it felt hollow. I needed her to understand. She had to see my face, witness the reckoning in my eyes. One night I found her laughing with friends at a bar. Her new flame wasn't the French-Canadian. She had already moved on again. I shadowed her until they left, watching as they climbed into an SUV. Silently, I approached, incapacitating the man with a chokehold. Viviana barely had time to notice before she froze, staring down the barrel of my Glock. "Aaron sends his regards," I said, my voice cold and steady. 2 shots to her chest ended it. By the time anyone arrived, I was already across the border, leaving no trace behind. That moment sparked an idea. How many others had been betrayed, humiliated, left yearning for vengeance? I realized there was a demand for justice someone like me could provide. And so my career as a hitman began, specializing in those who shattered vows of fidelity. For 4 years I worked in the shadows. Clients reached out anonymously through the dark web, each providing irrefutable evidence of infidelity. Payments flowed through encrypted channels, untraceable and secure. My targets were ordinary people, unsuspecting, complacent, unaware of the storm heading their way. Then, Amelia entered my life. I met her during a routine visit to a car dealership, her tall frame and striking beauty catching me off guard. Her long black hair and sharp intellect captivated me instantly. She agreed to a date within minutes, and 18 months later we were married in a grand ceremony. To the world, I was a successful financial advisor. My frequent business trips explained my absences, and Amelia never doubted me. Our marriage was blissful, marked by deep passion, unshakable loyalty, and shared moments that made life worth living. I couldn't have asked for more. Even as I maintained my secret life, I held to a strict professional code. Clients provided evidence. I executed my assignments cleanly and efficiently. Most of my targets were men. Cheating husbands made up the bulk of requests. I had no moral qualms about my work. It was a business, plain and simple. Betrayers deserved their fate, and I was the one to deliver it. Amelia and I built a family, raising 2 children who grew into bright, accomplished young adults. As they left for college, I began preparing to step away from my secret profession. Just a few more contracts, I told myself, and I'd leave the shadows behind for good. The final job seemed straightforward. Eric Anderson, an insurance salesman notorious for his infidelities. The dossier detailed his schedule, photographs of his family, and proof of his transgressions. He was staying at a nearby hotel, and my task was simple: confirm his guilt and take action. As I prepared, I felt a strange sense of finality. This wasn't just another job, it was the end of an era. One last act of retribution, and I could leave this life behind. Yet, beneath the surface, the thrill of the hunt simmered, a reminder of the choices I'd made and the person I'd become. I dug deep into my research about the hotel and discovered that the room he booked was located on the 5th floor of the East Wing. A quick look at Google Earth revealed something interesting: a construction site 1 block away. Its position was perfect. If I found a spot high enough, I'd have an unobstructed view straight into his room. The buildings directly across the street were no taller than 3 stories, making my potential vantage point ideal. On Friday evening, I casually mentioned to Amelia that I had a work trip scheduled for the upcoming week. "I'll leave Monday morning and probably be back by Thursday or Friday," I said, keeping my tone neutral. She looked up from her book, her expression curious rather than suspicious. "I thought you were done with those trips," she remarked. "This might be the last one," I replied with a shrug. "It depends on how things turn out. If this doesn't work, there might be one more." She seemed satisfied, her lips curving into a small smile. "Then we'll have the whole weekend together," she said, her voice bright with excitement. We spent Friday night lost in passion, and Saturday was a perfect day out, running errands and savoring a meal at our favorite restaurant. By the time Sunday evening came around, we were wrapped up in each other again, content in the comfort of our home. But when Monday morning arrived, it was time to leave. I drove to the airport, parked my car, and walked to a nearby storage unit. Inside, I swapped my vehicle for a dull gray Toyota sedan. It was nondescript, registered to a forged identity robust enough to withstand casual scrutiny, but not an intense investigation. By mid-morning, I was on the 7th floor of the construction site, setting up a spotting scope. When my target entered his room, I watched as he moved about briefly before answering a phone call. He left shortly after, around noon. There was no rush to follow him. I knew he'd be back. With the construction site dormant, I felt secure settling in to wait. It wasn't until after 6 p.m. that he returned, moving quickly to the bathroom to shower. Through the scope, I observed him emerging, noting his unimpressive build. The cold water seemed to have left him looking smaller, diminished. I wondered what attracted women to men like him. Was it charisma? It certainly wasn't his physique. Within half an hour, he was dressed and out the door again. I used the lull to grab some food and wait. He'd return, likely with company. My task was straightforward: document his affair, then eliminate him. The contract made no mention of harming his companion, and I intended to leave her untouched. For all I knew, she was just another victim of his lies. Just after midnight, the lights in his room flickered on, and my scope captured him entering with a tall, dark-haired woman. She wasted no time, pushing him against the door and kneeling before him. From my angle, I could see her back as she moved. Though the details were unclear, I knew they'd eventually make their way to the bed. As expected, they soon progressed, shedding clothes along the way. He was fully naked, and she was down to her underwear. When he pressed her onto the mattress, I considered taking the shot but held back. The angle was risky. Timing was crucial. Striking at the moment of climax ensured maximum vulnerability and reduced the chance of collateral damage. Their encounter stretched on for hours. I captured everything: photos, videos, evidence. When they finally collapsed into bed, exhausted from a final round, I reviewed the footage. One image stole the breath from my lungs. The woman's face was caught in perfect clarity, eyes wide, head arched in pleasure. Those eyes, Amelia, my wife. A wave of fury and disbelief crashed over me. The mission was compromised. Killing him, or both of them, would only lead to my downfall. My alibi wouldn't hold under scrutiny, and I couldn't think clearly through the fog of Amelia's betrayal. Rage threatened to consume me, but I forced myself to think of our children. Any action taken in anger could ruin them as much as me. Walking away from the contract wasn't an option either. If I abandoned it, another contractor would finish the job, and Amelia might not survive. Could this be a setup? Perhaps a trap laid by someone from a past contract seeking revenge. I returned to the storage unit and exchanged my sniper rifle for surveillance equipment. Back at the hotel, I tracked down their vehicles and discreetly attached GPS trackers. The next morning after they left, I entered his room using a spoofed keycard. His belongings were unremarkable. A few toiletries, some medications, including Viagra. I installed hidden cameras to monitor their interactions. With 4 days left to finish the job, I checked into the hotel under a false identity for easier access. The security cameras were limited to the entrance and elevators, leaving stairwells and corridors unmonitored. Meanwhile, I observed Amelia's routine, work, gym, home, until she called me just after 6 p.m. "Hey, babe," she greeted, her voice warm and familiar. "Hi, honey. I missed you last night," I replied evenly, masking the turmoil that churned within me. I dozed off on the couch, the low hum of the television fading into the background. When I finally woke, hours had slipped by unnoticed. I must have nodded off in front of the TV, and by the time I came to, it was already too late, she said quickly, her words tumbling out in a rush. "I figured as much," I replied, my fist tightening. "That's why I didn't disturb you." It was unfamiliar territory for me. Amelia had never lied to me before, or had she? Perhaps this was just the first time I had caught her in the act. "How's the meeting going?" she asked, steering the conversation away. "Complicated," I admitted. "An unexpected guest showed up and it's made things more difficult. I'll get the deal done, but it's going to take more work than I thought." "So, Friday instead of Thursday?" she asked, her tone oddly light. Was that relief I detected? "You don't sound too upset," I remarked, unable to keep the edge out of my voice. "Not at all," she answered a little too eagerly. "I'm just glad this is your last trip. If staying another day means you won't have to travel again, it's worth it." I noted her smooth recovery, but pressed on. "What are your plans tonight?" "Oh, just got back from the gym," she said casually. "Probably going to relax in front of the TV and call it an early night." "Don't forget," I teased lightly. "If you're not in bed by 11, you'll have to go home." She laughed, the sound forced. "I'll remember. Call me tomorrow, okay? I miss you. Good night." I didn't reply. Instead, I hung up, certain she hadn't noticed my silence. Picking up my phone, I dialed a trusted friend, a chemist known for handling delicate matters with discretion. Some situations demanded a specific touch, and this one was personal. Back at the hotel, I accessed the surveillance feed. The man was in his room, his phone ringing. "Hey, Aim," he greeted, his voice grating on my ears. My stomach churned. Amelia despised being called Aim, yet she seemed to tolerate or even welcome it from him. Their conversation was a slow poison. "I was late getting back," she said, her voice light. "Give me an hour and I'll meet you downstairs at 7:30. I can't wait." His laugh was nauseating. "I'll make you scream tonight," he said. "Forget that loser husband of yours." My breath caught and my chest tightened, but then his tone shifted abruptly. No, Amelia, I didn't mean it like that. Baby, please." His pathetic pleading filled the room. When he finally ended the call, I smiled grimly. His plans for the evening were falling apart. Moments later, my phone buzzed. Amelia. "Hey, love," I answered smoothly, hiding the storm beneath the surface. "I just realized I forgot to tell you I love you earlier," she said, her voice hesitant. "Are you okay? You sound a bit off," I asked, probing. "I'm fine. I just miss you," she replied softly. A beep interrupted her, the sound of another call coming through. On the surveillance feed, I saw him dialing her number. Why don't we keep talking? I suggested. It'll feel like I'm there. There was a pause. No, it's just my mom. I wanted to say I love you. Good night. I couldn't help myself. Good night, Aim, I said, the coldness deliberate before ending the call. Back on the feed, his phone rang again. Hey, babe, I'm really sorry about earlier. I know you hate it when I talk like that. I just want to be better for you. Tomorrow then? Dinner at Archie's, 7 p.m.? His tone was syrupy. I love you, Amelia. Her words lingered in my mind. Did she truly mean them, or were they empty reflexes? I would know soon enough. The man ordered food and beer from room service and began eating. That was my moment. After the delivery was complete, I knocked on his door. Standing out of view of the peephole, I waited. The door creaked open, and his face froze as he saw the silenced Glock aimed at him. Evening, Eric, I said, my voice calm. May I come in? He stumbled backward, the door clicking shut behind me. What do you want? I only have a few $100s. I'm not here for money, I interrupted, stepping forward. We're here for a conversation. My employer, you might know her as your wife Sophia, has a few questions, and you're going to answer them. His face turned ghostly pale. Don't lie, I warned. I'll know, and if you do, I'll shoot you. I don't want the mess, but Sophia? She'd relish the chance to divorce and publicly ruin you. His protests faltered, and I smirked, knowing this night would end on my terms. Financially, she recognizes your worth alive, not dead, and she's certain your children would be devastated by your absence. But don't misunderstand. She demands absolute, unvarnished honesty about your infidelities. She's ready to face each of the women involved, ensuring their spouses know exactly what happened. Now, if you come clean, fully and truthfully, I'll walk out of here without making things worse for you. Do we have a deal? I asked, twisting the cap off a beer and sliding it across the table toward him. I popped open one for myself, took a drink, and grimaced at the bitter taste. Is this the best this place can offer? I quipped with a crooked smile. He glanced at me, a glimmer of hope flickering in his eyes. So, if I tell you everything, you're not going to kill me? He asked hesitantly. I won't lay a finger on you, I assured him. You'll stay here, breathing and unharmed. In fact, I'd suggest calling your wife once I leave. Beg her for forgiveness. If not for yourself, then for the sake of your kids. I motioned toward the chair across from me, and he reluctantly sat down. What do you want to know? He asked cautiously. There are 4 women I already know about, I said, listing their names and locations with precision. His face paled, his mouth falling open in astonishment. And then there's Amelia, I continued, leaning forward. She works at a car dealership in town. Your wife doesn't know much about her yet, so let's begin there. How did you meet her? How long has this been going on? Don't leave anything out. Hesitant but cornered, he began to talk, nervously sipping from the beer I'd handed him. He met Amelia 4 months ago during a visit to her dealership, where he was pitching insurance. She handled financing, giving them a professional excuse to chat, but her beauty and charm had him hooked immediately. By the end of their morning meeting, he'd invited her to lunch, stunned by how quickly she agreed. Lunch transitioned into dinner that same evening since her husband was out of town. The night ended at his hotel, and, according to him, she exceeded all his expectations. As he delved into graphic details, I raised a hand to stop him. Spare me the play-by-play, just stick to the facts. How often did you two meet after that? I pressed. 8, maybe 9 times, he admitted. Whenever her husband traveled, she'd reach out. If I could adjust my schedule, I'd drop everything to be with her. She was worth it, better than anyone else. A smug smile crept across his face. He seemed momentarily detached from the gravity of his situation, finishing his beer and eyeing the minibar. Mind if I grab another one? He asked. Go ahead, I said evenly, keeping my eyes fixed on him. But don't push your luck. It'd be a shame if things got messy over a misunderstanding. He chuckled nervously and grabbed another beer. Want one? He offered. I declined with a curt shake of my head, and he settled back into his chair. You said Amelia always initiated contact, I probed. Do you think she's done this before? I don't think so, but she wasn't new to it. She felt no guilt, None at all. That said, she wouldn't tolerate any criticism of her husband. One time I called him a jerk, and she tore into me for it. He chuckled bitterly. Otherwise, she'd probably be here right now. Interesting, I murmured. Odd that she'd defend him so fiercely while betraying him. She compartmentalizes, he explained. In her mind, being a loyal wife and sleeping with me are completely separate. She doesn't see a reason to feel guilty. She might not, I replied, but her husband wouldn't see it that way. No amount of rationalizing changes the fact that it's the same mouth kissing him that... I let the sentence trail off, watching the realization dawn on his face. You didn't use protection, did you? I asked, already certain of the answer. No, he admitted sheepishly. She said it wasn't necessary. She was on the pill. And STDs? Given your track record, did she ever worry about bringing something home to her husband? I doubt it crossed her mind. I get tested regularly, though. I'm clean, he added, as if that absolved him. Before I could respond, his expression shifted. He pressed a hand to his chest. Are you all right? I asked, feigning concern. Heartburn, he muttered, rubbing his left arm. But his face turned purple, and sweat began pouring down his temples. He gasped, clutching his chest with both hands. Help me, he choked out. Eric, I said calmly, locking eyes with him. Panic flooded his gaze as his breathing became ragged. He had minutes left. You should have stayed away from Amelia, I said coldly. His eyes widened in shock before rolling back, and he slumped forward. Death would claim him in moments. I used that time to erase any sign of my presence. I meticulously arranged the scene, turning on the television and placing his half-eaten meal in front of him. When they found him, it would appear as though he died of a heart attack while eating dinner and watching TV. His history of high blood pressure and Viagra use would make the conclusion inevitable. After confirming he was gone, I slipped out, hanging the "Do Not Disturb" sign on the door. Back in my room, I felt assured of my work. The next evening, Amelia called. Hey, sweetheart, how was your day? She asked cheerfully. Productive, I said smoothly. Tied up a loose end. Speaking of which, how about we celebrate? Let's head to the coast for the weekend. Maybe stay longer. You've got vacation days, don't you? Use them. What's that job worth to you anyway? She laughed, her voice light and sweet. That sounds perfect, she said, oblivious to the storm I had just unleashed. I'll touch base with Brandon tomorrow to see what he thinks, I said to her. I'll give you a call in the evening so we can finalize the flight arrangements. Sounds like a plan. What's on your agenda for tonight? She asked. Nothing out of the ordinary, just catching up on a few things and diving into a new show. It's really good, I replied. Oh, the one about the woman having affairs? You're not getting inspired, are you? She joked. I chuckled. No, but it's definitely making me look forward to our next meeting, I said. Glancing at the clock, I realized she had a dinner reservation at 7, and it would take her a good 40 minutes to get there. Hey, my dinner's ready. The timer just went off. I'll talk to you tomorrow, okay? I said. All right, enjoy your meal. And your scandalous show, she quipped. Bye, love you, she said, hanging up. I ended the call and got comfortable. Later that evening, around 8:30, I heard persistent knocking on the door to Eric's hotel room. Since the "Do Not Disturb" sign was still in place, housekeeping hadn't been inside, and I figured Amelia must have gone to the restaurant, waited for Eric, and then come to find out what was going on. The knocking grew louder. About 20 minutes later, the electronic lock beeped, and the door creaked open. A hotel staff member stepped in, accompanied by Amelia. They found Eric slumped forward, his face buried in the crusted remnants of his dinner from the night before. The employee hurried over to check his pulse while Amelia stood frozen in the doorway, processing the scene. Is he dead? She asked flatly. The staff member didn't need long to confirm it. Eric's body was stiff, unmistakably lifeless. Yes, they answered. Without saying another word, Amelia turned on her heel, walked out, and disappeared into the elevator. By the time anyone realized she was gone, she had already left the building. Emergency services were called, and after their investigation, they found Eric's medication. The conclusion was clear: a fatal heart attack, worsened by his medical issues and the circumstances in which he was found. The police questioned the hotel worker, who explained that he had unlocked the door at the request of a woman visiting the deceased. Although he didn't know her name, he recognized her from previous visits. Eric had been a regular at the hotel, often hosting women in his room. The employees suspected they were escorts but had never said anything. Eric was both discreet and generous with his tips. After the room was cleared, I gathered my surveillance equipment, packed it away, and checked out the next morning. In the parking lot, I removed the GPS tracker from Eric's car, which was still parked where he had left it. On Saturday morning, I picked Amelia up from the airport, and we drove to the villa I'd rented for the weekend. She lit up when she saw the private pool and loungers. "I can't wait to jump in. Let me grab my swimsuit," she exclaimed. "Hold on a second," I said. "We need to talk first." She froze mid-step. "What did you just call me?" she asked sharply. "AIM," I repeated calmly. "Why? Didn't seem to bother you when Eric used it." Her face went pale, but she tried to play it off. "Eric? Who's Eric? Oh, come on. You know, Eric, the insurance agent you've been sneaking around with for months. The one you were with on Monday night when you told me you were too tired to call." She opened her mouth, starting to protest. "I have no idea where you got your—" she began, but I held out a photograph to her across the table. The image, taken through my scope, perfectly captured her in an intimate moment. Her expression shifted as she slumped into a chair. "Oh," she whispered. "That's all you've got? Just O?" I pressed. She sighed, defeated. "How long?" I asked. She locked eyes with me. 4 months, more or less. And he wasn't the first, was he? "Are you sure you want to dig into this?" She shot back, her tone cold. "I want the truth about my wife. Yes, I do. If you're going to insult me, go ahead and get it over with," she said flatly. "But before you do, there's something you need to hear." "And what's that?" I asked. "The reason why," she replied. I gestured for her to continue. "We've been married a long time, haven't we?" She began. I nodded. "How often do we even make love?" she asked. I stammered, hesitating. "Well, not as often as we used to," I admitted. "Exactly. When we first got together, we couldn't keep our hands off each other. Even after the honeymoon phase, we stayed close, almost daily. Then you started traveling more, gone for weeks or even months. I was used to intimacy every day, and suddenly I had to do without. I tried other ways to cope, but nothing really satisfied the need. One night I went to the gym to clear my head. I guess I gave off a vibe because men started swarming me. I ended up going home with one. It wasn't premeditated, but it filled the void. I hated myself for it the next morning and was terrified you'd find out. When you came back, I practically threw myself at you every night, trying to erase the guilt. But I knew it would happen again, and it did." She exhaled deeply before continuing. "Eventually I came to terms with it, but I made rules for myself. I never did it while you were home, never brought anyone into our bed, and cut off anyone who disrespected you. And I always made sure to get tested. I never wanted you to become entangled in this mess. And before you jump to conclusions, this wasn't merely about staying out of trouble. I couldn't bear the thought of putting you in danger. I took every possible step to ensure pregnancy was off the table. I relied on both an IUD and a contraceptive implant to make absolutely certain. When we decided it was the right time to start a family, I stopped using those precautions. I even went as far as to get DNA tests for our children, in case you ever questioned their parentage. I always knew the truth might surface one day, and I wanted to be prepared for your doubts. Yes, this means I've been engaging in this behavior for the entirety of our relationship. You had such a profound hold over me that I couldn't stop. It evolved into a need I couldn't control. I could go a day or two without acting on it, but after that, the tension would become unbearable, and I had to find a way to release it. That's all it ever was, an urge I needed to satisfy. I never developed feelings for those men. They were just tools to me, living, breathing objects, but nothing more. You're the only person I've ever loved, the only one I've ever been in love with. When you told me this trip would be your last, I was ecstatic. Finally, you'd be home for good, and I wouldn't have to seek out hollow replacements anymore. The only person I ever truly wanted would be here, with me. It's cruelly ironic that the last time I gave in to that urge was the time everything unraveled. Your last time? You asked, your voice tight. The photos I saw were from Monday. You said you couldn't go more than 2 days without. So am I supposed to believe you didn't step out the rest of the week? What about Tuesday? Or Wednesday? Or Thursday? She gave a soft, bitter laugh. Tuesday, he called to let me know he was back at his hotel, but then he insulted you. That was the final straw. I told him we were done, and I wasn't going to see him again. Later, he apologized, and while I accepted it, I made it clear I wouldn't see him that night. We agreed to meet on Wednesday for dinner, and no, that call I got while we were talking on Tuesday wasn't your mom. For the first time, she looked genuinely regretful. It wasn't, and I hated lying to you. Not enough to stop, I said flatly. Her eyes widened. Wait, you called me AIM during that call. I remember thinking it was odd. You knew, didn't you? I got the photos Tuesday morning, I said, my voice steady, along with transcripts of earlier conversations. She exhaled deeply, her shoulders slumping. I'm so sorry you found out that way. It must have been horrible. Let's stay focused, I said firmly. You didn't sleep with him on Tuesday, but what about the rest of the week? And how did his death affect you? Wednesday, he was supposed to take me to dinner, she said hesitantly. The night you told me you'd be binge-watching a show? I asked, my tone razor-sharp. I really was watching that show. It's great, just not on Wednesday. And no, it didn't inspire any ideas. As ridiculous as it sounds, please don't get angry. I never thought of it as cheating. To me, it was like grabbing lunch with a friend. I had a need, and you weren't there to fulfill it. So I turned to someone else. That's how I rationalized it. And I never claimed it was making love, because it wasn't. That was something I reserved for you. You're dodging, I said, cutting her off. Are you avoiding telling me what happened on Wednesday? Not at all, she said. We planned to have dinner, but he stood me up. I waited at the restaurant for nearly an hour, furious. I'd never been stood up before. So I went to his hotel. His car was in the lot, but he didn't answer the door. I convinced the floor manager to unlock it, and we found him face down in a steak dinner. He was dead. The EMTs said he mixed Viagra with blood pressure medication, which triggered a massive heart attack. Well, I said dryly, at least he didn't die in bed with you. That would have been quite the scene. Her face paled. Oh God, I hadn't thought about that. It would have been a nightmare. His poor wife would have found out. She already knew, I said. I'm pretty sure she's the one who sent me the photos. Amelia nodded slowly. I guess I don't have to wonder if you think I'll be seeing him again, I added coldly. She offered a faint, bitter smile. I'm not apologizing for what I did. I believed it was something I needed. But I am deeply sorry for hurting you, and for the way you found out. I was counting down the days until your trips were over, so I wouldn't have to do this anymore. But as long as you were away, I couldn't stop. All I could do was try to limit the fallout and hope you loved me enough to forgive. Why didn't you just tell me? I asked. We could have figured something out. Maybe I could have brought you on my trips. I know that sounds far-fetched, but I needed to understand. I didn't want to be that wife, she said quietly. The one who complains about the life she chose. You loved your job, and we had a good life together. I never intended for this to happen, it just did. And by the time I realized, it was too late to undo it. I studied her for a long time, my thoughts racing. What now? She asked tentatively. I stood, walked to the kitchen, and poured 2 glasses of wine. Returning to the table, I took a long sip before answering. I don't know. This is a lot to process. We've been together for so long, and I believed you loved me as much as I loved you. Yes, we had a fantastic, intimate life. Yes, I went without when I was away, but so did you. I stayed true to our vows. I didn't even use toys, just sheer willpower. How could you let your urges destroy everything we built? For what? To satisfy a fleeting craving? She opened her mouth to respond, but I raised a hand. No, I let you speak. Now it's your turn to listen. I poured another measure of wine into her glass, then into mine. the rich crimson liquid rippling as I tried to control the tremor in my hand. "There's so much I need to understand," I began, my voice steady, though tension simmered beneath the surface. "How is it that you can so easily separate love from physical intimacy? Everything I've ever learned suggests men are the ones supposedly built that way, not women. Women, they say, need emotional connection to truly find meaning in intimacy." I hesitated, scrutinizing her expression, searching for any hint of regret. "If what you're saying is true, that love was never a part of it, then what does that mean? You risked everything for something empty, for something that wasn't even worth it. Do you understand what that does to me? How it makes me feel? You told me once you couldn't go more than a few days without it. So tell me, what happens when time catches up with me? Men slow down as they age, everyone knows that. And for some women it's the opposite. They get a second wind. Is that where we're headed?" I leaned closer, lowering my voice to a near whisper. "Do I come home one day to find you with someone else because I can't keep up? Because what I can give you won't be enough anymore? How am I supposed to look at myself in the mirror, knowing that throughout our entire marriage you've been with other men? Not once, not twice, dozens, maybe even 100 times. And you said you got tested regularly. What does that even mean? You could have brought something back to me before the results ever came in." My words hung heavily in the air. "You could have passed me anything, HIV even. That's not a quick test. It takes months to show up. You could have killed both of us. And what would have happened to our kids then?" Her hand drifted to her arm, her fingers fidgeting in a way that betrayed the first signs of discomfort. I let a faint smile play across my lips, but it carried no warmth. "Eric was trash," I said softly, my tone almost kind. "But I think he started falling for you. Did you know that? He told me he'd drop every other mistress the moment you said the word, just to be with you." Her eyes snapped to mine, wide with confusion and a hint of panic. "What? When did you talk to Eric?" I swirled the wine in my glass, my gaze steady on hers. "Eric and I had a little conversation the night he died. I didn't appreciate seeing you with him, so I made sure it wouldn't happen again." The color drained from her face as she stared at me, her breath coming quicker. "What did you do?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I leaned in, the faint smile fading from my face. "The same thing I just did to you," I said in a low growl. "I dealt with the cheating bastard. Be sure to give him my regards when you meet him in hell." My friend, and this is the end of the story. If you liked this story, then put your royal like and subscribe to the channel. May the force be with you.